everybody, today I'm going to talk about something related to English teaching. I'm going to talk about teaching grammar and vocabulary. English teachers have to establish powerful base knowledge of ways in teaching English sentences and organize them in an accurately grammatical way to express a meaning. Generally speaking, English grammatical rules originated from the dialect involved in English learning. That is to say, English contains many dialects, each of which is constructed with its own unique features. Also, the major principles of sentence management in English grammar are shared by most of the local customs and dialects. Common rules of dialect can be generated into standard Englishes, as well as the English rules. About the grammar, the grammarian identifies the relation of the different kinds of parts to each other and find out universal grammatical principles are followed by most people in the world. Thus, the grammar rule was established. Grammarians in the field of linguistics and English teaching test a language to discover what kinds of speech units the writers or speakers are constructing might get into utterances and fragments. And there are major three grammatical components of grammar. From view of Roderick A. Jacobs in 1995, his book English Syntax, A Grammar for English Language Professionals, he mentioned the syntax, the grammatical principles, units, and the relation involved in sentence structure. Number 2, he mentioned lexical items, the set of individual words, suffix and prefix. Moreover, the concept of the third element he mentioned is semantics, the meaning associated with the lexicon of an idiom with the unit and relation in sentence structures. They are also included in grammatical structures, as well as the grammatical proficiencies of English learners. The above three components that construct grammatical structure need to interact in an ordered and systematical way. The grammatical rules decide how the orders in the sentences should be arranged. Jacob in 1995 emphasizes the significance to grammar teaching as follows. English teacher and other language professionals need to be familiar with the grammar of English. Grammar being understood as the analysis of the properties characterizing well-formed sentences of language. The three crucial components of this grammar are syntax, the lexicon, and semantics. Other factors as grammatical knowledge influence language structure, but for English it is useful to start by considering sentence structure and meaning independently of situations in which the sentences might be uttered. The prepositional content of a sentence is the core meaning that it has independent of context. The major principles and the properties notes are shared by the family of dialects we refer to as English. How an English teacher teaches grammar depends only on how well the teacher's grammatical competence is, but also what pedagogies of the English teacher uses to conduct the grammatical teaching. Many English teachers think learning English grammar is to learn a set of rules, which are complex and hard to remember. The most different parts of English from the other language is its grammatical structure and senses of tenses. English has a comparatively complexities of grammatical structure with tenses. To express the happening time in the sentence, the certain tense has to be used in the verb. Basically, there are 9 tenses and 2 voices. In the category of present tense, there are simple present, present perfect, and present continuous tense. In future tense, there are simple future tense, future perfect tense, and future continuous tense. Similar structure can be also found in the past tense, such as simple past tense, past perfect tense, and past progressive tenses. On the other hand, 2 voices include active voice and passive voice. Let's talk about an example of grammatical teaching. In English language, there is a special type of modal verb, including can and could, may and might, and must, shall and should and ought to, will and would. The modal verbs come before and modify the major verb in a sentence and make clear ideas like opportunity, requirements, or compulsion. The following are several modal verbs and their functions. Might is for saying uncertainty about the present or future. For example, I might go to the library tomorrow. Can is for expressing capability or likelihood. For example, I can speak in French and Japanese. Or language learner can gain higher input when feeling relaxing and confident. Moreover, if the speaker wants to ask permission to make a request, they can say, "Can you come and visit me next week?" So should is for expressing obligation. For example, I should go to school and discuss with my classmate for my English quiz or probability. As in, the books should arrive tomorrow because because I ordered it last Wednesday. So it also has a function of giving suggestions. I think your hard work should make your future bright. So this has a function of the prediction. Must is for displaying necessity or obligation. For example, I must go to the hospital and see my grandmother tonight. The modal must also gives powerful recommendation. You must not drink before driving. English modal auxiliary verb that has contract meaning can be like, you must be here at 10 a.m. with the implication of compulsion. In contrast with, you do not have to be here in the morning, with the implication of freely and optionally. English has a characteristic that include article. Articles of English contain the definite article the and indefinite article an or a. In grammatical rules of article, nouns might be needed or must with or without an article. The article of English is quite different from articles of Chinese, which imply express the function, the shape, or the material of the related noun, depending on vowel and consonant pronunciation. For the first sound of noun, a and an thus can be decided. About a grammatical curriculum that can be designed. In order to design a curriculum focusing on grammatical instruction, the following general grammatical rules are proposed by Schwager and Campbell. In their published textbook titled Better English in 30 Minutes a Day, 10 chapters of grammatical regulations are emphasized. First of all, a good English teacher should teach how to identify nouns. How about a noun in a sentence, a common or a proper noun? Common nouns are usually capitalized except at the beginning of a sentence, according to Schwager and Campbell in 2003. However, the first alphabet of proper noun should be capitalized. Moreover, the usage for singular and plural nouns, possessive personal nouns, reflexive nouns should be mentioned in the very beginning of the grammatical curriculum. Second, how to identify the usage of verbs and tenses should be taught to English learners. Every sentence must have a verb to describe the action of the subject. Since the subject and the verb are the two most important parts of a sentence, learning to recognize verb is essential to your progress in becoming a better writer, according to Schwager and Campbell in 2003. English learners should learn the usage of present and past tenses, action verbs, linking verbs, past tense, irregular verbs, principal forms of verbs, auxiliary verbs, adverbs, contractions, future tense, perfect tense, and conditional tenses, and as well as tense shifting. Thirdly, basic sentence structure should be conveyed to our language learner. That is to say, typical sentence pattern of English should be displayed. For example, the subject of the sentence is a person of the thing. The person or the thing the verb is asking or telling about. The subject may be a noun or a pronoun. Every sentence must have at least one subject and one verb, and express the complete thought, according to Schwager and Campbell in 2003. For the perspective of learning standard English without consideration of learning pragmatics or social linguistics, the usage of sentence structure items such as subjects and verbs, commands and requests, prepositional phrases, direct object of action verbs, pronoun used as subject and object, compound subject, objects, and contractions should be taught in the English classroom for English language learners. Fourthly, how to expand the sentence through different ways should be an important lecture in grammatical teaching. For example, a sentence can be added details with adjectives. Moreover, there are different points when practicing adjectives, such as kind of adjectives, position of adjectives, special form of adjectives, punctuating adjectives before a noun and comparison adjective. Adverb also can be proposed to expand a sentence. A good teacher should tell his or her English learners how to add details in a sentence with adverbs. Where can an adverb be positioned? What are the functions of different types of adverbs? The fifth point of the suggested curriculum is the main clause in grammatical training, based on Schwager and Campbell's interpretation in 2003. When you study prepositional phrases and verbal phrases, you learn that a phrase is a group of relative words without a subject and a verb. A group of relative words with a subject and a verb is called a clause. There are two kinds of clause: main and subordinate. To identify a main clause, look first for the verb and then for the subject. The main clause, look first for the verb and then for the subject. The main clause can stand alone as a sentence if the first word is capitalized and clause ends with a mark with a punctuation such as a period or a question mark. The main clause may also contain words or phrases in addition to the verb and the subject. English learners should learn how to identify main clause and connect main clause with the simple sentence and the compound sentence. What are the functions of joining main clauses and the punctuation when connecting main clauses? Why a good sentence created through clauses should follow the parallel structure? According to Schwager and Campbell in 2003, the usage of subordinate clauses is isolated as an important lesson of learning grammatical rules. A main clause is a group of words with a subject and a verb. It is called a simple sentence. When the first word is capitalized and it ends with a period or question mark or an exclamation point. The agreement is the most significant principle in English grammar, so that this point is introduced as a lesson. Identifying the subject and the verb is the first step in correcting subject-verb agreement errors. The verb agree in person and number with its subject, according to Schwager and Campbell in 2003. Moreover, commas are complex and hard to understand for beginners. The application can be, first of all, for coordinating connective between main clauses. Secondly, separating adverbs or adjectives before a noun. Thirdly, closing words that interrupt. Fourthly, set of words in direct address, setting of non-essential words, setting of direct quotation, indicating geographical names and addresses, etc. Punctuations and capitalization are also important for grammatical learning. In English period, question mark, exclamation point, semicolon and colon and quotation marks, hyphen and dash can be applied in structuring sentences. And some capital letters should be always capitalized, such as the first alphabet of a sentence. The first alphabet of a person's first name or last name, the person's pronoun, I, the first alphabet of names of continent, country, nationalities, states, cities, bodies, or water, places, and streets, the first alphabet of the name of the days of a week, month, holiday, and the first alphabet of the names of a commercial products, the name of the company, organizations, governmental agencies, or offices, the title of a person, a book, magazines, newspaper, article, story, poem, film, television, show, songs, paper, school, colleges, and so on. So, last but not the least, words sound alike sometimes are difficult for learners who have less opportunity to read English. Many words sound the same, nevertheless, they have different usages and meaning. For example, accept and accept, affect and effect, already and already, it's and its. It is and the pronoun, the no of knowing something and the rejection no, the personal and the personnel office, the principal and the principal, very quiet and very calm, quiet, So Stronger and Campbell in 2003 emphasized that words that sound alike or look alike can cause many problems in spelling. So these words are what we have to memorize clearly. In English language, there are diverse formats its vocabulary, such as the phrasal verbs and the word derivation. Phrasal verbs may not be easy for English learners to learn since they have more than one or two expressions and multiple syntactic patterns. Phrasal patterns can be applied in distinct ways between American and British English. They are usually two-word phrases consisting of a verb plus adverb or verb plus preposition. For example, ask someone out means invite, blow up means explode, break down means the function and the working are stopped. Schmidt, Nober, and Mollison Richter in 2006 note that the number of English lexicon is huge, which is basically from Old Englishes and from Norman combination of Latin-derived terms. This explains why English learners usually have to spend long several years mastering English in order to accumulate sufficient words in mind and establish vocabulary proficiency. Some scholars have proposed pedagogies of teaching and learning. Based on John's research in 2009, there is evidence that semantic prosody, a novel linguistic theme, should attract much attention in ESL or EFL word learning and teaching. Research suggests that inappropriate word choice arising from ignorance of the semantic is the notion of semantic prosody, and provides an overview of studies of semantic prosody from 5 perspectives: monolinguistic, cross-linguistics, register, lexicographical, and interlinguistic. For the perspective of semantic prosody, language learners should be able to make themselves integrate into immersing environment of whole English. From views of globalization, Lin emphasized that the interlinguistic type is a communication through simplified vocabulary can be applied in order to make compensation of the limited vocabulary accumulation. For strategies of communication can be utilized to facilitate words in order to communicate in a fluent way. In the book, A Case Study About Communication, the code switching, paraphrasing, restructuring, and the word coinage are proposed to use in English communication. And the following section introduces the teaching project of writing that argues the issue of interactive approach. Vocabulary acquisition research have been paid attention these years. A series of methodologies has been reported, including applying learner dictionaries, using forms of visual glossing, and so on. This study argued that because of research of vocabulary teaching methods do not have a long history, as Reed mentioned, English teachers should pay additional efforts in learning how to raise our English learners' vocabulary proficiencies through updated ways that have been provided to be effective. And this study aims to investigate the pedagogies of the language vocabulary. In addition, it reports the author's perception of specialized and modernized techniques of English vocabulary through interactive approaches that River in 2000 suggests, and provide the results of a research plan conducted at National Science University in Kaohsiung of Taiwan, where 26 learners learn higher intermediate level vocabularies in a required general English course. In the class of 26 students, the researcher as well as the trainer applied teacher-centered audiolingual in the first 2 months, and the student-student interactive approach is to learn vocabulary in later 2 months, as well as the fourth and the third months. The statistical result shows that 26 student performance of memorizing the higher level vocabularies was significantly different before and after the treatment of student-centered interactive approaches. The result of the study imply the teacher-centered approach should be replaced by the student-centered approach and interactive strategies when teaching vocabulary. About the pedagogies of teaching vocabulary, the pedagogies are important under the trend of globalization in the past 2 decades. In the increasing international situation resulted from frequent international interaction for various purposes, the adult language learners' vocabulary accumulation are confronting a condition of being tested. That is to say, the Chinese English learners' vocabulary proficiency would be examined due to the unavoidable worldwide contracts caused by the globalization. How can our English communication be carried out in an appropriate, understandable, and a smooth formal way? Vocabulary teaching would contribute to this point. If someone is asking this question, that should be considered seriously since it's directly associated with the real world. This study argues that under the trend of globalization, English teachers, especially who are teaching adult learners in universities, should fully apply the updated interactive approaches in order to teach their students English vocabulary. The reason is that their students are going to enter the real international societies, where comprehensible and fluent communication should be applied through sufficient vocabularies. If English teachers are not able to face the challenge of a globalization trend, their students will encounter uncertainty when they need to communicate with the right words. Also, the high school education might prove to be unsuccessful. This study argues that in order to accommodate with the trend of globalization, university teachers should figure out a dynamic way of teaching vocabulary for their students to really apply and make compensations for traditional vocabulary pedagogies. So this year, a number of researchers have devoted themselves to the techniques of vocabulary teaching and learning. Moreover, Zaha mentioned that the concentration on second language vocabulary acquisition has developed speedily in the last 10 years, while the second language vocabulary acquisition research is no longer a neglected area, an ignored area. A lack of subjective resources of teaching methods of vocabulary remain to be a problem in the field of teaching English due to the short history of research concerning the topic of vocabulary pedagogy. Hence, this study recommends an interactive approach of teaching vocabulary to the readers, and hopefully, the updated teaching strategies can be applied. About the interaction applied in language teaching has been mentioned by many researchers. This type of interactive method argues that the foreign language growth and the social and community growth are directly related to each other, and that one cannot be comprehended without each other. According to Professor of the Harvard University River in 2000, linguistic interaction is a collaborative activity involving the establishment of a triangular relationship between the sender, the receiver, and the context of situation. Through the interaction, the interlocutors gain an opportunity to double-check the meaning in the vocabulary of communication, to reconfirm their expressed meaning being received by the listeners, and to show that their patterns of language can be regarded as appropriate in their society and community. It is important that not only interactions of communication express the speaker's intended meaning, but also the interlocutors can convey in a way that the content of the speaking is understandable and suitable, based on the intergroup members' social identity. Integrationists are researchers who believe in interactions, focus on the social context of language development and how the relation between the language learner and the person with whom he or she interacts influences language acquisition. According to Richard Platt and Platt in 1998, after a series of interacting activities in the target language, the interlocutors should be able to make progress in vocabulary. Since the interactants need to understand each other's words in order to continue the communication. Hence, this study agrees to above scholars' suggestion that interaction should be an effective way of teaching and learning vocabulary. And this study argues that several modernized and updated language pedagogy should be applied to teach vocabulary. Based on Rivers' theory, she suggests that small group work would be an ideal type of interaction. In her book, Interactive Language Learning, in 1987, the Professor River suggested that interacting activities can be controlled through two forms of interactions, which are small group work and pair work. Within the formats of small group work, gathering information and gatekeeping are two functions that group work can offer. Furthermore, a pair work activity's behavior of finding key sentence, discourse role play, and the helping encounter can be easily and effectively proceeded. So students in group of 3 or group of 4 then discuss in the foreign language the 3 or 4 most important points to remember in this unit, or some unresolved problem. Participants in a small group can learn and cooperate to collect information and knowledge that they are not familiar with. It is convenient for the student to hold a seminar inside or outside of the classroom in order to have brainstorming, debate, and resolve problems that an individual is not able to resolve independently.